Blah, blah, blah. Hey, Cubs. Not sure if you're hearing me right or not. I'm having to deal with some technical stuff because apparently everything in the world decided to reload itself. Oh, shit. That too. Okay. Having to rearrange things, so bear with me, Cubs. Don't know why changing one scene can screw so many things up. Especially when it was like a brand new screen that I'd put together. I'm not even 100% sure I'm streaming right now. Let me find out, shall we? Well, it looks like I'm on. Waiting to hear my own audio, though. Hello? Okay. That's craziness. Craziness, insanity. I'm gonna have to fix this for every freaking scene too, aren't I? Yep. Okay. So, this scene's set. Now I can... Great honk. Nope. But, tell Discord I was doing crap. Da 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 da. Bow, bow, bow. Okay. Do 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 do. Okay. Okay. What? That's weird. It's showing on one screen, but not on the others. Well, it's not what I usually use on this one anyway. So, if you guys back, we pull up on the screen. A second. It's like having chat on the screen. Bigger. Okay. Duke. Yeah. I'm not gonna mess with that thing right now. Okay. Update the title. Damn, kid. It's brutal. Sorry, I'm listening to another stream while I'm trying to get this stuff done. Okay. Should be safe. Looks pretty good. Okay. I can take it back off studio mode because. No. I need to studio mode because I'm going to fix the closing screen too. Where is it? Okay. It's not going to show. It's forward. It's been changed. Screen. Save it. Way off screen. There I am. Sound of it. There, cool. Okay. All right, back to here. Cool. Let's see. I guess I should do the alert. Not that I don't expect it won't help a lot of people, but I'm doing the alerts anyway. Okay. Tweeting it out, tweeting it out, tweeting it out, tweeting it out, no, tweeting it out, tweeting it out. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm gonna switch back over to the chat screen. Okay, so it's nice to know that my camera's working this time. I was just a little crazy, but oh well. Okay. Don't mind Discord announcements and all that wonderful garbage. Paste. I think I've sent what's on right now, so if anyone comes in, it would be nice if you would let me know. Doop, 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 doop. Bum, 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 bum. Okay. 1, 2, 3. So promo. I'm going to post it on that channel apparently. And post it there. Okay. Well, wait. Missed one. Post in the Pokemons to its own. I'm going to miss at least 2 other people's streams while I'm doing this, but, well. Okay. Anyway, Cubs. Oh, I wanted to change the schedule so it just shows that we're doing 2 hours of reading. And it looks like next week or so I may be running out of Norwegian folk tales. So there's that. I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do after this. But hey, let me get back to Storyteller screen. There we go. Let me fix that chat window real quick. It's hanging over a little. Let the road, just expand it, move it over, then shrink it. There we go. Now I can kind of see you there. Okay, and 1 down to 2, 1 0. I made the coffee thing quite as big as I made it. The coffee thing's nice. I've only got 1 person contributing, and I thank you a lot, Escalade. Okay, so make sure I do not have any desktop audio coming out. Okay, audio background kind of going. Okay. Get back on my window. So how are we doing tonight, Cubs? I apologize if you hear the fan going, but no, it's freaking hot, so. We are already after the 15-minute mark, so I should probably get started. Tonight's first story. Like many retail agents, well done and poorly rewarded. There once was a man who had to go to the forest to get some firewood. Then he met a bear. "Give me your horse, or else I'll kill all your sheep in the summer," said the bear. "Oh, God save me, no," said the man. "There's not even a stick of firewood left back home. You have to let me take home a full sled of wood, or else we'll freeze to death. I'll bring the horse back to you tomorrow." They agreed that he would do just that. But the bear told the man that if he didn't come back, he would lose all his sheep in the summer. The man loaded up his firewood and set out for home, though, as you might suspect, he wasn't very happy about the agreement he'd made. Then he met a fox. What is making you look so dejected?" asked the fox. "Oh, I met up a bear here," said the man. "I had to promise to give him my horse tomorrow, or about the same time. If he doesn't get the horse, he said he would tear apart all my sheep in the summer." "Eh, is that all?" said the fox. "If you give me your fattest ram you own, I'll get you out of this fix you're in. Yes, I will." The man agreed, and he promised to stick to his pledge. When you bring the horse to the bear tomorrow," said the fox, "I'll call to you from up on the scree. That's what I'll do. When the bear asks you who's calling, tell him it's Hunter Bear, and he's the best marksman in the world. After that, it's up to you." The next day, the man set off. When he met the bear, he began calling up from the scree. "Hey, who's that?" said the bear. "Oh, that's Hunter Bear. He's the best marksman in the world," said the man. "I recognize his voice," he added. "Have you seen any other bears around here, Eric?" the voice shouted from the trees. "No, I haven't seen any bears," said Eric. "What's that standing next to your sled?" the voice shouted from the woods. "Tell him it's the trunk of an old pine," whispered the bear. "Oh, it's just the trunk of an old pine tree," said Eric. "We usually take pine stumps like that up and topple them onto the sled. That's what we do," shouted the voice in the woods. "If you can't manage it on your own, I can come and help you." "Tell him you can do it on your own and topple me onto your sled," said the bear. "No, thanks. I can do it on my own. Yes, I can," said the man. He toppled the bear onto his sled. "We usually tie down pine stumps like that. That's what we do," shouted the voice from the woods. "Do you need some help?" "Tell him you can do it on your own, then tie me down tight," said the bear. "No, thanks. I can do it on my own," said the man. Then he set about tightly tying down the bear. He used all the rope he had. After that, the bear couldn't lift even a paw. "We usually shove an axe into the pine stumps like that. That's what we do," shouted the voice from the woods. "Then it's easier to steer the sled over the big hills." "Pretend that you're shoving the axe into me," whispered the bear. The man picked up his axe and split the bear's skull in two. Yikes. The bear fell dead at once. Then the man and the fox were great friends and in perfect agreement. When they reached the man's farm, the fox said, "I have a good mind to come inside with you, but I'm not very fond of your dogs. I'll stay out here until you can bring me the ram. I only want one, and it has to be nice and fat." The man thanked the fox for his help and promised to get the ram. After he'd put the horse in the stall, he headed to the sheep shed. "Where are you going?" asked his wife. "Oh, I'm going over to the sheep shed to get a nice fat ram for the nice fox who saved my horse," said the man. "That's what I promised him." "Why on earth should you give a ram to that thieving fox?" said his wife. "We have the horse back and the bear, too. That fox certainly has stolen more geese from us than the ram is worth. And if he hasn't, he will. No, a couple of the meanest dogs. Put a couple of the meanest dogs in your sack. Turn them loose on the fox. Do that, and maybe we'll be rid of the thieving scoundrel," said the wife. The man thought that was a good idea. He took 2 mean red dogs and stuffed them in a sack. Then he set off. "Do you have the ram?" said the fox. "Yes, come and get it," said the man. He untied the cord of the sack and let the dogs out. "Whoa!" said the fox and jumped back. "So it's true what they say, that a job well done is poorly rewarded. And now I see another saying is also true. Your own kind can be your worst enemy." And the dogs chased after him. Yikes. Dude. The fox did him a solid, and he turns around and tries to get the fox out. Poor bear. Anyway. Our next story, dear cubs. True and Untrue. There once were 2 brothers. One of them was named True, and the other Untrue. True was always honest and kind towards everyone. Untrue was nasty and full of lies, and no one could ever trust a word that he said. Their mother was a widow and had little to live on. When her sons were grown, she had to send them off to earn their own living in the world. She gave each of them a little bag of food, and then they had to go. They walked until evening, and then sat down in the forest next to a tree that the wind had toppled. They got out their bags of food. They were hungry after walking all day, and they thought it would be good to have a bite to eat. "If you agree, let's eat what's in your bag until there's nothing more. Then we can open mine," said Untrue. True was happy with that, so they began to eat. But Untrue took all the best pieces and stuffed them into his mouth. For his part, True only got bread crusts and burnt pieces of leftover pork rinds. In the morning, they again ate food from the bag belonging to True, and they did the same at midday. By then, there was nothing left in his bag. They walked until evening, and again it was time for some food. True wanted to have something to eat from his brother's bag, but Untrue refused. He said the food was his, and that he had only enough to feed himself. "Yes, but you ate the food from my bag until there was nothing left," said True. "Yes, and if you're foolish enough to let other people eat all your food, then it serves you right." That was Untrue's opinion. "So you can just sit there and drool," he said. "Your name is Untrue, and untrue you are. That's what you've been all your days," said True. When Untrue heard this, he flew into a rage. He threw himself at his brother and poked out both his eyes. "Now try and see whether someone is true or untrue, you stupid blind man," he said. With that, he ran off. Poor True now wandered around, fumbling his way forward to the middle of the dense forest. He was blind and alone, and he had no idea what to do. When he happened to grab hold of a big, stout linden tree, he thought he would climb up and sit there overnight to keep himself safe from wild animals. He thought to himself that when the birds started singing, it would be daytime, and he could try to fumble his way forward again. So he climbed up in the linden tree. After he'd sat there for a while, he heard someone come and began cooking and rustling about under the tree. Moments later, others arrived. When they greeted each other, he heard who they were: the bear and the wolf, the fox and the hare. They had all come to celebrate midsummer. The animals set about eating and enjoying themselves. When they were done with that, they began chatting with one another. Then the fox said, "Why don't we tell each other a little story while we're sitting here?" The others thought that was a good idea. They said it would be amusing, so the bear began, for he was the foremost of all. "The King of England has such poor eyesight," said the bear, "that he can hardly see even 2 feet in front of him. If he happened to climb up into the linden tree in the morning, there will be dew on the leaves, and he took some of that dew and smeared it on his eyes, and he regained his sight. His eyes would be as good as new." "Yes," said the wolf. "The King of England was also a deaf-mute daughter. But if he knew what I know, he'd soon figure out what to do for her. The last year when she took communion, she spat out the bread. Then a big toad appeared and swallowed the bread. If they could only dig under the floor where they'd find that toad. He's sitting right there under the altar rail, and the bread is still in his mouth. They should cut open the toad, take out the bread, and give it to the princess. Then she would be just like other folks again, and she'd be able to hear and speak." "Oh, yes," said the fox. "If the King of England knew what I knew, he wouldn't be so short of water in this palace. Under the big flagstone in the middle of the courtyard, this is the clearest spring water that anyone has ever wanted. If only he knew where to dig for it." "Yes," said the hare. "The King of England has the loveliest orchard in all the land, but the trees don't bear even a sour apple. Heavy gold chains buried in the ground, wrapped 3 times around the orchard. If the king dug it up, then he'd have the most splendid orchard in all the realm." "Well, it's getting late. We'd better be going home now," said the fox. Then they all set off. After they'd left, True fell asleep as he sat there in the linden tree. But when the birds began to sing in the morning, he woke. He took some dew from the leaves and smeared it on his eyes. Then he could see just as well as before Untrue had poked his eyes out. After that, he went straight to the King of England's estate, where he asked for work. He was hired at once. One day the king went out to the courtyard. After he'd walked around for a while, he wanted to drink from the water pump. It was a hot day, and the king was thirsty. But when the servants poured him some water, it was muddy, sludgy, and disgusting. The king was quite annoyed. "I don't think there's a man in my whole kingdom who has worse water on his farm, and yet I must go looking for fresh water far over the mountain and valley," said the king. "Yes, but if you allow me to get one of the servants to break up that flagstone lying there in the middle of the courtyard, you'll have plenty of fresh water," said True. The king was very pleased to hear this, and no sooner did they take up the flagstone and do a little digging than a stream of water shot into the air. The water was clear and as steady as the spigot of a cask had been turned. No fresher water could be found in all of England. A while later the king went out to the courtyard again. Then a big hawk came flying down, chased after his hens. Everyone began clapping their hands and shouting, "There it goes! There it goes!" The king grabbed his rifle and was about to shoot the hawk, but his eyesight was so poor. It made him quite distressed. "By God, if someone could tell me what to do about my eyes, I think I'll soon be completely blind," said the king. "I can tell you what to do," said True. Then he told the king what to do, as he had done it himself. As well as you can imagine, that very evening the king set off for the linden tree. The next morning all he had to do was smear his eyes with the dew from the leaves, and his eyesight was as good as new. After that the king favored True more highly than anyone else. He always kept True close, no matter where he went, both home and away. Then one day he went out to the orchard together. I don't know how this happens, I certainly don't, said the king. No man in England spends as much time on his orchard as I do, and yet I can't get a single tree to bear even a sour apple. Oh, yes, said True. If you'll grant me what is buried 3 times around the orchard and get the servants to dig it up, then your orchard will bear fruit. The king gladly agreed. Then True had the servants start digging. Finally, he got to the whole golden chain out of the ground. After that, True was a very rich man, much, much richer than even the king. Yet the king was pleased now, for the orchard bore so much fruit that the branches of the trees hung all the way to the ground, and no one had ever tasted such sweet apples and pears. On another day, when True and the king were talking, the princess happened to walk past. The king grew quite distressed when he saw her. Isn't it a shame to have a daughter as lovely as mine, and yet she can neither hear nor speak, said the king. Oh, something can be done about that, said True. When the king heard this, he was so happy that he promised to give True the princess as his bride, along with half the kingdom, if he could make her well again. True took a couple of men with him to the church. There they dug up the toad that was sitting under the rail. They cut open the toad and took out the piece of bread, which they gave to the princess. She was just like other folks again. She was instantly able to hear and speak. Then True was to marry the princess. Great preparations were made for the wedding. News of the celebration spread far and wide throughout the whole kingdom. While everyone was dancing at the wedding, a poor boy came in and asked for a scrap of food. He looked so ragged and miserable that everyone crossed themselves when they saw him. But True recognized the boy at once. It was Untrue, his brother. Don't you know me? Said True. Oh, where would the likes of me have ever met such a grand gentleman as you? Said Untrue. Yet we have met, said True. I was the one whose eyes you poked out a year ago today. Your name is Untrue, and untrue you are. I said it then, and I'll say the same thing now. But you're still my brother, and so you shall have some food. Then you can go to the linden tree where I sat last year. If you hear something there that will bring you luck, then so much the better for you. He didn't have to say that twice. Untrue thought that if True had learned so much from sitting on the linden tree, that he would become king of half of England in half a year's time, and then he too would go there. He set off, and when he got to the linden tree, climbed up in the branches. He hadn't sat there long when the animals again arrived to eat and drink and celebrate midsummer underneath the tree. After they'd eaten their fill, the fox wanted each of them to tell a story. Then, as you might imagine, Untrue listened too hard that his ears practically fell off. But the bear was angry. Yes, he did. He growled and said, "Somebody's been gossiping about the stories we told last year. So this time we're going to keep quiet about what we know." Then the animals said good night and went their separate ways, and Untrue was none the wiser. That's because his name was Untrue, and untrue he was. All right, Cubs. Let's get into our next story, which, again, features Ashlad. Nice to see him back. The song is Paal and Paal and Esben Ashlad. There once was a man who had 3 sons, Paal and Paal and Esben Ashlad. Other than the 3 sons, the man had almost nothing at all. He was so poor that he could barely even feed himself. That's why he kept telling his sons that they'd have to go out into the world and earn their own keep. If they stayed at home with him, they would starve to death. Some distance away was a royal palace, And right under the king's windows grew an oak that was so big and so mighty that its shadow blocked out all the light from the king's courtyard. The king had promised a great deal of money to anyone who could chop down the oak, but no one had been able to do so. As soon as someone cut off a single chip from the tree trunk, 2 chips would grow back in its place. The king also wanted to have a well dug that could hold water all year round. His neighbors had wells, but he had none, and the king thought that was a shame. To anyone who would dig a well that would hold water all year round, the king offered both money and more. But no one had been able to do so, for the royal palace stood up high on a hill. No sooner had they dug a few inches in the ground than they struck bedrock. Now that the king had his mind set on getting those 2 tasks done, he sent word to all the churches, both far and near. He decreed that anyone who could chop down the big oak tree in the royal courtyard and dig a well that could hold water all year round would win the princess and half the kingdom. As you can well imagine, there were plenty who wanted to try. Yet no matter how hard they pounded and chopped, and no matter how they hacked and dug, it did no good. With every blow, the oak grew thicker and thicker, and the bedrock never got any softer. After a while, the 3 brothers wanted to set off and try their luck as well. Their father was happy to hear this. Even if they didn't win the king's daughter and half the realm, maybe they would at least find work somewhere with a good man. That's what their father thought, and that's what he wished. When the brothers presented their father with their plan to go to the royal palace, he gave them permission at once. Then Per, Paal, and Esben Ashlad set off. After they'd walked a good distance, they came to a spruce-covered slope. At the top of the steep heath, there they stood. There they heard something chopping on the heath. I certainly wonder what is doing all the chopping up on the heath, said Esben Ashlad. You and your constant wondering, said both Per and Paal. Is there anything to wonder about when a woodcutter is chopping trees up on a heath? I still think it would be amusing to see what's up there, said Esben Ashlad, and with that he took off. Oh, you're such a child. It'd be good for you to learn to follow along with us, shouted his brothers. But Esben paid them no mind. No, he didn't. He headed up the slope in the direction of the chopping sound. When he reached the top, he saw that an axe was chopping at the trunk of a pine tree. Good day, said Esben Ashlad. So here you are, doing all this chopping? Yes, I've been chopping away for a very long time, waiting for you, replied the axe. Yes, well, here I am, said Esben. He picked up the axe and took the blade off the handle. Then he stuffed both blade and handle inside his bag. When he got back to his brothers, they laughed and made fun of him. So what sort of strange sight did you find up on top of the heath? They said. Oh, it was just an axe that we heard, said Esben. After they'd walked for a while, they came to a mountain crag. From on top of the sound came something hacking and digging. I certainly wonder what is hacking and digging up in the crag, said Esben Ashlad. You and your constant wandering, said Per and Paal. Haven't you even heard birds hacking and pecking on trees before? Yes, but I still think it would be amusing to see what is up there, said Esben. No matter how much his brothers laughed and made fun of him, he paid them no mind. He set off for the mountain crag. When he came to the top, he saw that a hoe was hacking and digging in the ground. Good day, said Esben Ashlad. So here you all are alone, hacking a hole. Yes, I am, said the hoe. I've been hacking and digging here for a very long time, waiting for you, I said. Who's been waiting? Yes, well, here I am, said Esben. He picked up the hoe and took the blade off the handle. Then he hid both in his bag and went back to join his brothers. So, was it something terribly strange that you found up there on the mountain, Craig? Said both Parent and Paul. Yes. Well, there was nothing much. It was just a hoe that we heard, replied Esben. Then the brothers continued for a good distance until they came upon a stream. All three of them were thirsty after walking so far, and they lay down next to the stream to drink. I wonder where this water comes from, said Esben Ashlad. And I certainly wonder whether you're right in the head, said both Parent and Paul. If you're not already crazy, then you certainly will be soon, with all the wondering you do. Where does the stream come from? Haven't you ever seen water trickling from a crevice in the ground? Well, yes, I have, but I would still like to see where the water comes from. That I would, said Esben. And he set off to follow the stream. No matter how much his brothers shouted and laughed at him, it did no good. He went his own way. After he'd followed the stream for a good distance, it began to get smaller and smaller. And after he'd walked some more, he caught sight of a big walnut. Out of the walnut trickled the water. Here's a watercress. Good day, said Esben. Are you here all alone, seeping and trickling? Yes, I am, said the walnut. I've been here seeping and trickling for a very long time, and waiting for you. Yes, well, here I am, said Esben. He had picked up the tuft of moss and stuck it in the hole, so the water wouldn't come out. Then he put the walnut in his bag, and he went back to join his brothers. So did you find out where the water comes from? Said both Parent and Paul. Yes, and it was just coming out of a hole, said Esben. Then his two brothers laughed and made fun of him again, but Esben Ashlad paid them no mind. At least I found it amusing, that I did, he said. After the brothers again walked a good distance, they came to the royal palace. By then, everyone in the realm had heard that anyone might win the princess and half the kingdom if they could chop down the big oak and dig a well for the king. So many had come to try their luck, and that oak was now twice as big and thick as it started out. For I'm sure you remember that 2 chips would grow for every one that was cut from the tree. That's why the king had decided to punish anyone who tried but failed to chop down the tree. The 2 brothers refused to be frightened away. No doubt they thought they could fell the oak. Pear, who was the oldest, was first to try. But the same thing happened to him as to all the others who tried to chop down the oak. For every chip he cut from the tree, 2 grew in its place. Then the king's servants sliced off Pear's ears and set him out on an island. Yikes. Now Paul wanted to try, but the exact same thing happened to him. He made 1, 2, 3 cuts on the tree. When the king's servants saw the oak grow, they sent Paul out to the island as well. They sliced off his ears even closer, for they thought he should have learned to be more careful. Then Esben Ashlad wanted to try. If you really want to look like a branded sheep, we'll slice your ears off at once. Then you won't have to make the effort, said the king. He was angry at Esben after his brothers had failed. I still think it would be amusing to try, said Esben, and he was granted permission. He took the axe blade out of his bag and put it back on the handle. Go ahead and chop, Esben said to the axe. It began to chop so the chips of wood flew, and it didn't take long before the oak fell. When that was done, Esben took out the hoe blade and put it back on the handle. All right, go ahead and dig, said Esben. The hoe began to hack and dig so fast the earth and the rocks sprayed out, and then the well grew deep, as you might imagine. After he had made the hole deep and wide as he liked, Esben Ashlad took out the walnuts and placed it in the center at the bottom. Then he pulled out the tuft of moss. Seep and trickle, said Esben. and the water began to trickle, then gush out of the hole in the walnuts, and in no time the well was filled to the brim. Esben chopped down the oak, which blocked the light from the king's windows, and he dug a well in the king's courtyard. So he won the princess and half the kingdom, just as the king had promised. But it's a good thing that Per and Paal had lost their ears, or else they would have heard everyone say that Esben Ashlad's constant ordering had not made him crazy after all. I have no idea what a Toxel is. I don't recognize any of these Pokemon. Not to be confirmed now. Oh well. Okay, Cubs. We've only made it 45 minutes, so we will continue going. Cool? Cool. The next story: The Mill That Keeps Grinding at the Bottom of the Sea. Long, long ago, there were once two brothers. One of them was rich, and one of them was poor. When Christmas Eve arrived, the poor brother had nothing to eat in his house, neither sour milk nor bread. So he went to see his brother and asked him, in God's name, for a little food for Christmas. This was not the first time the man had asked something from his rich brother, who had always been miserly, nor was the rich man especially pleased to get another request. If you do what I asked you to do, I'll give you a whole ham, he said. The poor brother thanked him and agreed at once. Here it is, now go straight to hell, said the rich man, and he tossed the ham to his brother. Well, I made a promise, so I'll have to do it, said the poor brother. Then he took the ham and set off. He walked and walked all day, and at dusk he came to a place that shone so splendidly. This must be it, thought the man with the ham. Out of the woodshed stood an old man with a long white beard chopping firewood for Christmas. Good evening, said the man with the ham. Good evening to you. Where are you off to so late, said the man. I'm headed for hell, if only I can find the right way, replied the poor man. Well, you've come to the right place. This is it, said the old man. When you go inside, everyone will want to buy that ham of yours, for ham is so rare in hell. But don't sell it for any price. Instead, trade it for a hand mill that's behind the door. When you come back out, I'll teach you what to do with the mill. It's a very useful thing to have, that it is. The man with the ham thanked him for his good advice and knocked on the devil's door. When he went in, everything happened just as the old man had said. All the demons, both big and small, swarmed around him like ants on the ground. One after the other, they made offers for the ham. It's true that my wife and I were going to have this ham for Christmas Eve dinner, but seeing as you're all so eager to have it, I suppose I'll let it go, said the man. But if I'm going to have to part with the ham, I want the handle that's behind the door over there. The devil was reluctant to let the handle go. He haggled and wrangled with the man. The man held his ground, and the devil had to give up the mill. When the man went out to the yard, he asked the old woodcutter how to work the mill. After he learned how to do that, He thanked the woodcutter and set off for home as fast as he could go. Even so, he didn't get back until the clock struck midnight on Christmas Eve. "Where in the world have you been?" said his wife. "I've been here sitting hour after hour, longing and waiting, and I don't even have 2 sticks and set crosswise under the pot for the Christmas porridge." "Oh, I couldn't get here any sooner. There was one thing and another I had to do, and there was a long way to go. But take a look at this," said the man. He set the handmill on the table. First, he told it to make candles, then a tablecloth, then food and ale, and all other good things for a Christmas Eve dinner. Whatever he asked for, the mill produced. His wife crossed herself again and again. She wanted to know where the husband had found such a handmill, but he didn't want to tell her. "Where I found it is neither here nor there, but you can see the mill is a good one, and the mill water never freezes," said the man. Then he made food and drink and plenty of other good things for the Christmas celebration. And on the third day he invited his friends over, for he wanted to share in his feast. When the rich brother saw everything that was being offered at the farm, he grew both annoyed and furious, for he wished to for he refused to wish his brother well. On Christmas Eve my brother was in such great need that he came to me and begged for food, in God's name. Yet now he's putting on a feast as if he were both count and king, he said. "But where in the flames of hell did he find all these riches? Tell me that," said to his brother. "Behind the door," said the man who owned the handmill. He didn't bother to give any sort of accounting for what had happened. No, he didn't. But later that evening, after he'd had something to eat and drink, he couldn't resist, and he brought out the mill. "Here you can see what has given me all these riches," he said. When he told the mill to start grinding, it produced one thing after another. When his brother saw this, he dearly wanted to have that mill. At last he got it, though he had to pay $300. In return, he'd be allowed to have the mill when it was haymaking season. "If I can have it then," he thought, "I'll be able to get food for many years to come." Well, as you might imagine, at that time the handmill did not gather rust. And when the haymaking season arrived, the man gave the mill to his brother, though he was careful not to tell him how to use it. In the evening, when the rich brother took the mill home, the next morning he told his wife to go out to the farm folks and gather the hay. "I'll make the mid-morning meal today," he said. When the mealtime approached, he set the handmill on the table and said, "Grind for me herring and gruel, and do it fast and well," said the man. And the mill began making so much herring and gruel that all the dishes and the troughs were quickly full. Soon there was enough to cover the entire kitchen floor. The man fumbled and fiddled with the mill to try to make it stop, but no matter how much he turned it or twisted it, the mill kept grinding. Soon the gruel reached so high that the man was about to drown. Then he tore open the door to the living room, but it didn't take long for the mill had made enough food to fill that room too. Only with the greatest effort was a man able to reach down to open the flood of gruel and get it out the front door latch. When he got the door open, he didn't stay long in the house. He set off with the herring and gruel gushing out right behind him, across the yard and into the fields. By now his wife, who was spreading out hay, thought it was taking a long time for the mid-morning meal to be ready. "Even though my husband hasn't called us home, let's go. He doesn't know how much about making gruel, so I suppose I'll have to help him," the woman said to the haying folks. Then they started heading for home. After they got a short distance up the hill, they saw the flood of herring and gruel and breads sloshing towards them. The farmer himself was at the front of the torrent. I wish to God that each of you had 100 wooden lunchboxes. Carefully. Be careful you don't drown in the gruel, shouted the farmer. He raced past them as if the evil one were on his heels and headed for the place where his brother lived. There he begged his brother, for God's sake, to take back the hen mill and do it at once. If it keeps grinding for another hour, the whole countryside will perish in this flood of herring and gruel. Ugh. His brother refused to take back the mill unless he was paid another $300, so his brother had to pay him. Now the brother, who used to be poor, had both money and the mill. It didn't take long before he'd fixed up his farm, and it was more splendid than the one his brother owned. He made the mill grind for him so much gold that he could clad the buildings with gold plate. The farm stood close to the shore, so it could be seen gleaming and glittering from far out at the sea. Everyone who sailed past wanted to come ashore and visit the rich man who lived on the golden farm. And everyone wanted to see the wondrous hand mill, for news of the mill had spread far and wide. By now there wasn't a soul who hadn't heard of it. At long last the ship's captain appeared, and he wanted to see the mill, and he asked whether he could grind salt. "Oh yes, of course I can grind salt," said the man who owned the mill. When the ship's captain heard this, he dearly wanted to have that mill, cost what it might. And he thought that if he owned such a mill, he wouldn't have to sail far away from dangerous waters for his cargo to fill his cargo with salt. And at first the man didn't want to give up the mill, but the ship's captain begged and pleaded. Finally he agreed to sell the mill, and was paid many, many thousands of dollars for it. As soon as the ship's captain hoisted the mill onto his back, he left at once, for he was afraid the man might change his mind. And there was no time to find out how to use the mill before he headed for a ship, moving as fast as he could go. When they had sailed a good distance out to sea, the captain got out the hand mill. "Grind salt, do it fast and well," he said. Then the mill began grinding salt so fast that it sprayed everywhere. Then the cargo hold was full, and the captain wanted the mill to stop. But no matter what he did or how hard he tried, the mill just kept grinding as fast as ever. The salt heap grew taller and taller until the ship finally sank. There, at the bottom of the sea, the mill stands today, grinding day in and day out. That is why the sea is salty. Cool. Greedy people are going to end it growing hunger. So, probably think about that. Okay, so, toes. Our next story, The Maiden on the Glass Mill. There once was a man who had a hay meadow somewhere high up on the slope of a mountain. In that meadow was a hay barn where he stored fodder. Though I don't imagine there hadn't been much of anything from that barn for several years. Every Midsummer Eve, when the grass was the most splendid and lush, the hay meadow would end up grazed bare, as if a whole herd had gnawed all the grass all night. It happened once, and it happened twice. But then the man was quite dismayed about this. He told his sons, he had three, and the youngest was Ashley, as you might as well know, that one of them had to sleep in the hay barn on Midsummer's Eve. They couldn't kill him. During the last 2 years, the grass had been eaten away clear down to the nub. Whoever agreed to go to have the Whoever agreed to go would have to pay careful attention, said the man. Well, the eldest boy wanted to go up and tend the meadow. He said he would keep a close eye on the grass so that neither folks, nor livestock, nor the devil himself would get any of it. As the evening approached, the boy went into the barn and lay down to sleep. In the middle of the night, there was such a roaring, that such an earthquake, the walls and the roof shook. The boy jumped up and took off as fast as he knew how. He didn't dare even look back. And that night, the hay was eaten up, just as it had been done the past 2 years. On the next Midsummer Eve, the man again said that this couldn't go on. Year after year, they were losing all the grass in the outlying meadow. One of his sons would have to go up there and keep watch, keep a very close eye. The second oldest son wanted to try that evening. He went into the hay barn and lay to sleep, just as his brother had done. But in the middle of the night, there was a loud roaring and a great earthquake, even worse than the one on last Midsummer's Eve. When the boy heard this, he was so frightened that he took off as fast as if he were being paid to run. The next year, it was Ashlad's turn. When he got ready to leave, his two brothers laughed and made fun of him. "Oh, you're certainly the right person to keep watch over the hay. You've learned nothing but how to sit by the fire in the evening and warm yourself," they said. Ashlad paid no mind to what they said. As evening approached, he wandered up to the hay meadow that he knew. There he went into the hay barn and lay down. After a while, there was a great roaring and crashing that was vile to hear. "Oh, that's as bad as it gets. I suppose I can stand it," thought Ashlad. After a while, there was another crash, and an earthquake that made the straw fly around the boy. "Oh, if that's as bad as it gets, I suppose I can stand it," thought Ashlad. The next moment, there was more roaring and such an earthquake that the boy thought the walls and the roof were going to collapse. But the sound passed, and then it was utterly quiet. "I wonder if that's going to happen again," thought Ashlad. But no, it didn't. It was quiet, and stayed quiet. After he'd lain there for a while, he heard a sound as if a horse was chewing just outside the barn door. The boy crept over to look through the barn door, and there stood up a crack. There he saw a horse grazing, and the horse was the horse was big and sturdy and splendid. Ashlad had never seen such a horse before. The horse wore saddle and bridle and carried full armor for a knight. All the items were made of copper, so shiny that they gleamed. "Aha, so you're the one who's been eating our grass," thought the boy. "I'll soon put a stop to that." He hurried to get his fire steel and tossed it over the horse. Then the animal was powerless to move. It grew so docile that the boy could do whatever he liked. He climbed on the horse's back and took it to a secret place. That's where he left it. When he went back home, his brothers laughed and asked him how things had gone. "You didn't stay long in the hay barn, did you? Or maybe you never even made it as far as the hay meadow," they said. "I stayed until the barn till the sun came up, but I didn't hear or see a thing." "No, I didn't," said the boy. "God only knows what it is that frightened both of you so badly." "Oh, well, we'll see soon how well you kept watch of the meadow," replied his brothers. But when they went up to the meadow, the grass was just as tall and thick as it had been the night before. On the next Midsummer's Eve, the same thing happened. Neither of the two older brothers dared go up to the outlying meadow and watch over the grass, but Ashlad said he would go. Then the exact same thing happened as last summer's eve. First there was roaring and an earthquake, then after a moment another, and then another. But this time all three earthquakes were much, much stronger than before. Then suddenly it was utterly quiet. The boy heard something chewing outside the barn door. Moving as silent as he could, he crept over to the door opening. Oh, yes. There stood a horse right next to the wall, munching and gnawing. This one was even bigger and sturdier than the last one. This horse had a saddle too, and a bridle full armor for knights. All the items were made of shiny silver, and as magnificent as anyone could imagine. Aha, so you're the one who's been eating her hay in the night, thought the boy. I'll soon put a stop to that. He picked up his fire seal and tossed it over the horse's mane. The animal stood there as meek as a lamb. The boy rode the horse over to the place where he left the other one, and then he went back home. I suppose it looks lovely up at the hay meadow today, said the brothers. Yes, I suppose it does, said Ashley. They headed up there again. The grass was just as thick and tall as before, but that didn't make them any kinder towards Ashlad. When the third midsummer arrived, neither of the two older brothers dared stay in the barn in the outlying meadow to watch over the grass. They had been terrified of the night they'd spent there, and that they would never forget. But Ashlad certainly dared to go. The exact same thing happened again. There were 3 earthquakes, each more vile than the other. The last one made the boy dance from wall to wall of the barn to the other. But then it was utterly quiet. After he'd lain there for a while, he heard something chewing outside the barn door. Again he crept over to the door opening. There stood a horse close by. It was much bigger and sturdier than the other two he'd already caught. Aha! You're the one who's been eating all our grass this time. I'll soon put a stop to that. He grabbed his fire seal and tossed it over the horse. Then the animal stood there as if nailed to the ground, and the boy could do whatever he liked. He rode the horse over to the place where he left the other 2 horses. Then he walked back home. And the brothers made fun of him, just as they had done before. They had joked that he must have done a good job watching over the grass last night, for he looked as if he were still asleep. But Ashlad paid no mind to what they said. He merely invited them to go and see. And they did. Again, the grass stood just as splendid and thick as before. In the land where Ashlad's father lived, the king had a daughter, and he decreed that he would only give her to someone who could ride up to the glass mountain. This was a tall glass mountain, as shiny as ice, that stood close to the royal palace. At the very top, the king's daughter would sit with 3 golden apples on her lap. Whoever could climb up there and take the apples would have the princess and half the kingdom. The king sent word to all the churches of the realm and in many other kingdoms as well. The princess was so lovely that everyone who saw her fell in love with her at once, whether they wanted to or not. Well, as you might as well imagine, all the princes and knights wanted to win her and half the kingdom. They came riding from all corners of the world. They looked so splendid that they practically gleamed, and the horses they rode looked as if they were prancing. Every single man thought he would win the princess. When the day arrived, as decided by the king, the area near the glass mountain was swarming with big crowds of knights and princes. Anyone who could crawl or walk wanted to be there to see who would win the king's daughter. Ashlad's 2 brothers also set off, but they didn't want to take him along. They said that folks would make fun of them if they were seen in the company of such a changeling, so vile and filthy. Did he look after digging in the ashes all right? I can just as well stay here. I don't mind being on my own. No, I don't, said Ashley. By the time the older brothers arrived at the glass mountain, all the princes and knights had set up with the gallop, making leather fly from their horses. But it did little good, let me tell you. For the instant their horses set their hooves on the mountain, they slid back. No one could even make it more than a few feet up. And that was no wonder. for a mountain was slippery as a glass window pane, and as steep as the wall of a house. Yet everyone wanted to win the king's daughter and half the kingdom, so they kept riding and sliding, and nothing more came of it. Finally, all the horses were so worn out that they couldn't make any more attempts. They were sweating so much that the lather poured from them, and the knights had to give up. The king wondered whether he should make it known that the riding would begin again the next day. Maybe things would go better. But all of a sudden the knight appeared, riding a horse so splendid that no one had ever seen such a horse before. And the knight's copper armor and copper bridle shone so bright that they gleamed. The others shouted that he might as well save himself the trouble of trying to ride up the glass mountain, for it would do no good. But the knight paid no mind to what they said. He rode straight towards the glass mountain, then headed upward as if it were nothing. He made it a good distance up. It might have been a third of the way. When he reached the point, his horse turned around and rode back down. The princess thought she'd never seen such a lovely knight. While he was riding, she thought, may God let him make it up here. When she saw him turn around, she threw one of the golden apples after him, and it rolled down into his shoe. No sooner had the knight come down the mountain than he rode the horse off, moving so fast that no one knew where he went. That evening, all the princes and knights were summoned to appear before the king. The one who had ridden the farthest up the glass mountain was supposed to present the golden apple to the princess and tossed it. But none of them had anything to show the king. One after another they stepped forward, but no one could present the apple. That evening, when his two brothers returned, they found Ashlad at home. The brothers had talked to great length about riding attempts that had been made up the glass mountain. At first, no one had managed to even get a few paces up the slope. But then a knight arrived in copper armor and copper bridle so shiny that it could be seen gleaming from far away, he said. That fellow certainly could ride. He rode a third of the way up the glass mountain, and could easily have gone up to the top if he'd wanted to. At that point, he turned around. He probably thought that was far enough that time. Oh, I would have found it so amusing to see that night. Yes, I would, said Ashlad. He was sitting next to the fireplace, digging in the ashes as he usually did. You, said his brothers, the likes of you would never be welcome among such high-born gentlemen. What a hideous creature you are, sitting there. The next day, the two older brothers were about to set off once more. Again, Ashlad asked to go with them so he could watch them ride. But no, they refused to allow it. They said he was too hideous and too vile. I could just as well stay here. I don't mind being on my own. No, I don't, said Ashlad. By the time the two brothers had arrived at the glass mountain, all the princes and knights were already set off riding again. Some of them even had their horses nearly shod, but it did no good. They were sliding and riding, just like the day before. None of them managed to get more than a few feet up the slope. When all of them had worn out their horses until they could do no more, they had to stop. When the king wondered whether he should make it known that the riders would continue the last time the following day, maybe then things would go better. But he changed his mind. He thought he would wait a little while to see whether the copper knight might show up again. There was no sign of the knight, but all of a sudden a knight appeared riding a horse that was much more splendid than the knight in the copper armor had ridden. This man had silver armor, silver saddle, and bridle, all of them so shiny that they could be seen gleaming and glittering from far away. Again, the others shouted to him. They told him he might as well save himself the trouble of riding up to the glass mountain, for it would do no good. The knight paid no mind to what they had to say. He rode over the glass mountain and went up even higher than the copper armor had. But when he was two-thirds of the way up, he turned his horse around and rode back down. The princess liked this knight even more than the first one. She sat there wishing that he would ride to the top. When she saw him turn around, she tossed the second apple after him, and it rolled down into his shoe. As soon as the knight reached the bottom of the glass mountain, he rode so far and fast away that no one could see where he was. That evening, everyone was summoned to appear before the king and princess. Whoever had the golden apple was supposed to be present. One after another, the men stepped forward, and none of them had the golden apple. Just as on the previous day, the two brothers went home that evening and talked about what had happened, about everyone who tried to ride up the mountain and failed. Then at long last the knight appeared with silver armor and a silver bridle, and saddle too, they said. And he certainly could ride. He made it at least 2/3 of the way up. Then he turned around. That was some fellow. The princess tossed him a second golden apple, said the brothers. Oh, I would have found it so amusing to see that knight, said Ashlad. Well, he certainly was shinier than the ashes you're sitting and digging in the room, you filthy, hideous creature, said his brothers. On the third day, everything went exactly as it had before. Ashlad wanted to go along and watch the riding, but his brothers refused to take him. When they got to the glass mountain, no one was able to ride even 2 feet up the slope. Everyone was now waiting for the knight in the silver armor, but he hadn't been seen or heard. At long last, the knight appeared riding a horse so splendid that nobody had ever seen the likes of the steed. The man wore golden armor and had a golden saddle, and a golden bridle that was so shiny, that they could be seen glittering and gleaming from far away. The other knights and princes didn't even manage to shout that it would be no use for him to ride up. They were so astonished to see such a splendid knight. He rode right over to the glass mountain and raced up the slope as if it were nothing. The princess didn't even have time to wish that he might make it all the way up. The moment the knight reached the top, he grabbed the third apple from the lap of the princess. Then he turned his horse around and rode back down. The next seconds, before anyone knew it, it vanished from sight. When the two brothers returned home that evening, they talked about the great lengths of how the riding had gone that day. Finally, they mentioned the knight and the golden armor. That was certainly some fellow, another knight as splendid as the one in the world, said the brothers. Oh, I too would have found that so amusing to see that knight, said Ashlad. Well, he gleamed far more brightly than that bed of embers you're sitting and digging through, you hideous, filthy creature, said his brothers. The next day, all the knights and princes were to appear before the king and the king's daughter. I think it had grown too late the night before. Too many attempts. The one who had the golden apple was supposed to be present. One after another, the men stepped forward. First the princes, and then the knights, but none of them had the golden apple. Oh, one of them must have it, said the king. For we all saw someone ride up the mountain and grab the apple. Then he decreed that everyone in the whole kingdom should come up to the castle and try to present the apple. Well, come they did, one after another, and no one had the golden apple. Finally, Ashlad's two brothers also appeared. They were the very last ones, and the king asked them whether it was true that there was no one else. And, well, we do have a brother, they said, but he certainly didn't take the golden apple. He hasn't been away from the heap of ashes in the past few days. Oh, that's neither here nor there, said the king. Everyone else has come to the castle. He must come here too. Then Ashlad had to go to the royal palace. Do you have the golden apples? Do you? Asked the king. Yes. Here's the first one, and here's the second one, and here's the third one, said Ashlad. He took out of his pocket all 3 golden apples. Then he cast off his soot-covered rags. There he stood in his golden armor, looking so splendid that he gleamed. Then you shall have my daughter and half the kingdom. You have certainly earned both, said the king. And so they were wed. Ashlad married the king's daughter, and their wedding was joyously celebrated. For everyone knew how to celebrate, even though if they couldn't ride up to Glass Mountain. And if they haven't stopped celebrating, they are probably still celebrating today. Golden apples. Experimenting. Oh well. Golden apples and glass mountains. Okay. We're hour 21. Not bad. So, our next story, Butterball. There once was a woman who was baking. She had a little boy who was so chubby and plump, and he was always asking for good food. That's why she called him Butterball. They also had a dog called Goldtooth. All of a sudden, the dog began barking. Run outside, my Butterball, said the woman, and find out why Goldtooth is barking at us. The boy ran outside. When he came back, he said, "Oh, God save me. There's a big, tall troll woman coming here. And she has her head under one arm and a sack on her back." "Hurry up and hide under the baking table," said his mother. Then the big troll came in. "Good day." "God bless you," said the mother of Butterball. "Isn't Butterball home today?" asked the troll. "No, he's in the forest with his father hunting grouse," replied the woman. "Blast it," said the old troll woman. "I have such a nice little silver knife that I want to give him." "Hey, hey, here I am," said Butterball from under the table. Then he came out. "I'm so old and my back is so stiff," said the troll. "You'll have to slip inside my sack and get the knife yourself." When Butterball climbed into the sack, the troll flung it over her shoulder and dashed out. Turkey. After they'd gone a good distance along the road, the troll grew tired and said, "How far until we find some place to sleep?" "Half a mile," replied Butterball. The troll put down the sack next to the road. Then she went over to a small grove of trees and lay down to sleep. In the meantime, Butterball picked up the knife and cut open the sack. Then he slipped out, and put a big pine root in his place, then hurried back to his mother. When the troll got home and saw that what was in the sack, she was terribly angry. The next day, the woman began baking again. All of a sudden, the dog began barking. "Run outside, my Butterball, and find out what Goldtooth is barking at." Oh no, it's that horrible creature," said Butterball. "She's back again, with her head under one arm and a big sack on her back." "Hurry up and hide under my baking table," said his mother. "Good day," said the troll. "Is Butterball home today?" "No, he's not," said his mother. "He's out in the forest with his father hunting grouse." "Blast it," said the troll. "I have such a lovely little fork that I want to give him." "Hey, here I am," said Butterball, and he came out. "My back is so stiff," said the troll. "You'll have to slip inside the sack and get the fork yourself." When Butterball was inside the sack, the troll flung it over her shoulder and took off. After they got a good distance along the road, the troll grew tired and asked, "How far is it until we find somewhere to sleep?" "3 miles," replied Butterball. The troll set her sack down on the road, then went to the forest and lay down to sleep. While the troll was in that, Butterball made a hole in the sack and climbed out. Then he put a big rock in his place. When the troll got home, she made a big fire in the fireplace and set a big kettle under the flames so she could boil Butterball. Then she picked up the sack. She was going to slide Butterball into the kettle, but a big rock fell instead and knocked a hole in the bottom. Then all the water in the kettle ran out and doused the fire. The troll grew very angry and said, "No matter how heavy he makes himself, I'm going to get him." The third time, the exact same thing happened as twice before. Goldtooth began barking, and Butterball's mother said to her son, "Run outside, my Butterball. Let's find out who Goldtooth is barking at." Butterball ran outside, and when he came back in, and said, "Oh, God save me and preserve me. It's that troll woman again. She has her head under one arm and a sack on her back." "Hurry up and hide under the baking table," said his mother. "Good day," said the troll when she came to the door. "Is Butterball home today?" "No, he's not," said his mother. "He's out in the forest with his father, hunting grouse." "Blasted," said the troll woman. "I have such a lovely little spoon that I would like to give him." "Hey, here I am," said Butterball. Now he came from under the baking table. "My back is so stiff," said the troll. "You'll have to slip inside the sack and get the spoon yourself." When Butterball climbed inside the sack, the troll flung it over his shoulder and took off. This time, the troll didn't go off by herself to sleep. Instead, she went straight home with Butterball inside the sack. When they got there, it was Sunday. The troll woman said to her daughter, "Take Butterball out of the sack and slaughter him, and cook him in soup until I get back. I'm headed to church to invite guests to dinner." After the servants had left too, the daughter took Butterball out to slaughter him, though she didn't really know how to go about it. "Wait a minute, and I'll show you what you're supposed to do." "Yes, I will," said Butterball. "Lay your head down on the stool, and I will show you." And that's what she did, the poor thing. Butterball picked up an axe and chopped off her head, as if she were a chicken. Then he put her head in the bed and her carcass in the pot to make soup for the troll's daughter. After he'd done that, he went out clambering about on the roof, taking along the pine root and the rock. Placed one above the door and the other on the troll woman's chimney. When everyone came back from church and saw the head in the bed, they thought the daughter lay there sleeping. Then they went over to taste the soup. "Soup should taste good." "Butterball soup," said the troll woman. "Should taste good." "Daughter soup," said Butterball. No one paid him any mind. Then the troll woman picked up a spoon to have a taste. "Should taste good." "Butterball soup," she said. "Should taste good," said Butterball. "Should taste good." "Daughter soup," said Butterball from the chimney. By now everyone had begun to wonder who was talking, so they decided to go outside and find out. When they came out the door, Butterball threw the pine root and the rock down on their heads, and killed them dead. They took all the gold and silver he could find in the house. With that, he was certainly rich. Then he went home to his mother. Butterball. Just, definitely elements of a different story in it. Okay, it's hour 29. 2 more stories. Okay, our next story. Big Pear and Little Pear. There once were 2 brothers, both were named Pear. So they called the older one Big Pear and the younger one Little Pear. When their father died, Big Pear inherited the farm and married a woman who had a great deal of money. Little Pear stayed at home with his mother. Until he came of age, he lived off the pension she was given when the farm passes to the older son. When Little Pear came of age, he received his inheritance. When Big Pear said that his brother could no longer stay on the farm, living off of his mother's pension. It would be better if he went out to the world to find work. Little Pear thought that wasn't such a bad idea. He bought himself a fine horse, and filled a wagon with meat, butter, and cheese. Then he headed for town. But there he sold everything, and used the money to buy liquor and spirits. No sooner did he get home than he invited folks over to share what he had brought back. He poured and served drinks for neighbors and kin, and they poured and served drinks for him in return. He lived it up for as long as the money lasted. When the scoundrels were gone, and Little Pear's purse was empty, he went back home to his old mother. By then he owed nothing more than a calf. When spring arrived, he let the calf out to graze in the meadow that belonged to Big Pear. Then Big Pear got mad and killed the calf. Little Pear flayed the hide off of the calf and hung it in the bathhouse until it was properly dry. Then he rolled it up and stuffed it in a sack, and headed out to sell it. But wherever he went, folks just laughed at him and said he had no use for dried calf hide. After he walked a long way, he came to another farm. There he went inside and asked for lodging for the night. "No, I can't very well offer you lodging," said the woman. "My husband is up in the mountain pasture, and I'm home alone. You'll have to ask for lodging at the neighboring farm. But if they don't take you in, you're welcome to come back. You shouldn't be without a place to stay." As Pear went by the alcove window, he saw a pastor sitting in the room. The woman seemed to be keeping company with him. She set ale and liquor down on the table and a big pot of sour cream porridge. The pastor sat down at the table to eat and drink, but then the man in the home came home. When the woman heard her husband on the porch, she quickly picked up the porridge pot and set it behind the stone hearth guard. She put the ale and the liquor in the cabinet, and she stuffed the pastor into a big chest that stood nearby. All this Little Pear saw from outside. When the husband had gone in, he followed and asked if he might find lodging for the night. "Yes," said the husband, "we will give you lodging." Then he invited Pear to sit down at the table and have something to eat. Little Pear sat down at the table. He brought the calf out. Now he placed it at his feet. After they were sitting for a while, Little Pear started stepping on the cowhide. "What are you saying now? You can't keep still," said Little Pear. "Who are you talking to?" asked the husband. "Oh, it's just the maiden soothsayer inside this calf hide of mine," said Pear. "What's she telling you?" said the husband. "She's saying there's plenty of sour cream porridge behind the hearth guard," said Little Pear. "She's not much of a soothsayer. There hasn't been any sour cream porridge in this house for a year and a day," said the husband. Pear told him to take a look. So that's what he did. And there he found the pot of sour cream porridge. They began helping themselves. As they sat there, Pear stepped upon the cowhide again. "Shush," he said. "Can't you keep your mouth shut?" "What is your soothsayer telling you now?" said the husband. "She's saying there's plenty of ale and liquor under the cellar steps," replied Pear. "She may never have spoken falsely before, but that's what she's doing now," said the husband. "Ale and liquor. I can't remember having anything like that in the house." "Take a look," said Pear. That's what the husband did. And true enough, he found both ale and liquor. The man was overjoyed. What did you pay for that soothsayer of yours? I must have her no matter what you want payment, said the husband. I inherited her from my father's estate, so she didn't cost me much, said the bear. To be honest, I don't really want to part with her. That's neither here nor there. If you let me have what's in the old chest standing by the alcove, I'll let you have the soothsayer. The key of that chest is missing, cried the woman. Oh, I'll take the chest without the key, said Bear. Then he and the husband quickly agreed to trade. Bear got a rope instead of a key, and the husband helped him hoist the chest onto his back. With that, he set off. After Bear had walked a good distance, he came to a bridge. Underneath rushed a river so fierce that it frothed and foamed, and it roared so loudly that the whole bridge shook. Oh, so much liquor, said Pear. I can't tell if I've been drinking more and more. Why should I keep lugging this chest with me? If I hadn't been foolish and so drunk, I would have never traded you away for my soothsayer. I'm just going to dump this chest in the river right here on the spot. And he began to tie the rope. Wait, God save me for God's sake. That's the parish pastor you have in this chest, cried the man. It must be the devil himself who's trying to make me think that they're pastor, said Pear. But whether he pretends to be a pastor or a parish clerk, he's going into the river. Oh no, I really am the parish pastor. I was carrying out my clergyman duties and paying a visit to the woman. Her husband is a brutish and crazy man. That's why she had to hide me in the chest. I'm wearing both a silver watch and a gold watch. I'll give you both of them to you, along with $800. Just let me out of here, shouted the pastor. Oh my, that really is you, pastor, said the bear. They picked up a rock and smashed open the lid of the chest to let the pastor out. The men set off at once for the parsonage. They moved swiftly and easily, for he no longer had the watches or money to weigh him down. When little Bear came back to the home, told Big Bear, calf hides are certainly worth a lot in the marketplace right now. What did you get for your calf hide? Said Big Bear. No less than it was worth. I got $800. For bigger and fatter calves, the hides would be worth double that amount, said Little Bear. He showed his brother the money. Good you told me that, said Big Bear. He killed all the calves and cows that he owned. Then he set off for town with the skins and hides. When he got to the marketplace and the tanners asked him for the price of the hides, Big Bear said, 800 for the small ones, and twice that for the big ones. But everyone just laughed and made fun of him. They said there was no need for him to behave that way. He could slip inside a madhouse for much less than that. Then Big Bear understood what had happened and how he'd been fooled. When he got back home, he was in a foul temper. He cursed and swore that he would kill his brother that very night. Little Bear heard what he was saying. When it was getting late, Little Bear climbed into bed that he was shared with his mother. After a while, he asked her to change places with him. He said he was freezing, and her spot next to the wall was much warmer than his. She agreed to change places. A short time later, Big Bear came in carrying an axe and crept over the bed. With one blow, he chopped off the head of their mother. In the morning, Little Bear went into the living room to find Big Bear. God save and preserve me, someone killed our mother, he said. The sheriff probably won't be pleased about how you got back the pension you've been paying mother. But Big Bear was right. He told Little Bear, for God's sake, not to tell anyone what he knew, and if he kept quiet, he would get $800. Little Bear took the money and set their mother's head back on her body, put her in sled, and set her off to the marketplace. There he hung a basket of apples, some in each arm, but each apple in their hands. The ship's captain came over, for he thought she was a market woman. He asked if she had apples for sale and how many he could buy for his going, but the old woman didn't reply. The captain asked her again. She didn't reply. How many can I buy for a skilling? He shouted for the third time, but the woman just sat there as if she didn't hear or see him. The captain grew very angry. They struck her under her ear. Then her head fell off and rolled across the marketplace. At that instant, little Bear came running. He wept and carried on, threatening to beg misfortune of the captain, for the man had killed his mother. My dear sir, if you don't tell anyone what you know, I'll give you $800, said the captain. And that's what they agreed upon. When little Bear got home and told Big Bear, "Old woman is certainly worth a great deal in the marketplace today. I got $800 for her mother." And then he showed him the money. Oh, that's good to know, said Bear. He had an old mother-in-law, so he killed her once. Then he set off to sell her. But when folks heard that he was offering dead people for sale, they reported him to the sheriff, and it was only by the skin of his teeth that he escaped arrest. When Big Bear got back, he was so afraid and enraged that he threatened to kill Little Bear on the spot. But there was no need to wait. Yes, well, we're all headed down that same path, said Little Bear. But there's only a night between today and tomorrow. But if I'm about to leave this world right now, I have one request. Put me in the sack hanging up there and carry me to the river. Big Bear didn't refuse. He stuffed his brother in the sack and set off. But no sooner had he gone a short distance than he remembered something he had forgotten. He had to go back and get it. In the meantime, he set the sack down next to the road. A man happened to come past, herding a splendid flock of sheep. To heaven, to paradise, to heaven, to paradise, shouted the little Bear from inside the sack. And he kept chanting and calling those words. Could I be allowed to go there too? Said the man in the flock of sheep. Yes, just untie the cord in the sack and climb in. Then you can take my place and go there yourself, said the Bear. I'll gladly wait until another time. Yes, I will. But you'll have to shout the same words I'm saying, or else you won't end up in the right place. The man untied the cord in the sack and got in to take Little Bear's place. Bear retied the cord. And the man began shouting, to heaven, to paradise, to heaven, to paradise. And he kept chanting these words. After Bear put the man inside the sack, he wasted no time. He hurried off with a flock of sheep, rushing at a good pace down the road. Meanwhile, Big Bear returned. He hoisted the sack on his shoulder and carried it to the river. The whole time the sheep farmer inside the sack shouted, to heaven, to paradise. Yes, well, go ahead and see if you can find your way there, said Big Bear, and he threw the sack into the river. After that, Big Bear headed for home. Along the way, he met his brother, who was herding a big flock of sheep. Big Bear was very surprised, and he asked the little Bear how he managed to escape the river, where he found such a splendid flock of sheep. You certainly did me a brotherly service by throwing me in the river, replied Little Bear. I sank like a rock straight to the bottom. There were so many flocks of sheep, let me tell you. Thousands of sheep were down there, each flock bigger than the next. And as you can see, sheep for sure, said Bear. Good you told me that, said Big Bear. He rushed home to get his wife, and then took her to the river. There he crawled into a sack, told her to hurry up and tie the cord, and then throw him off the bridge. I'm going to get a flock of sheep, but if I stay too long and you see that I can't manage the flock of my own, then jump in after me and help me out, said Big Bear. Well, don't take too long, for I'm yearning to see those sheep, said his wife. She stood there and waited for a while. Then she thought to herself that her husband probably would be able to manage rounding up the flock of sheep. So she jumped in after him. And with that, Little Bear was rid of both of them. He inherited the farm and the land, the horses and the tools. and had enough money to buy himself a yoke of oxen. Wow. Just wow. Let's see, might be able to do 2 more stories tonight, so feel free to. The next story is Ragged Cap. There once was a king and a queen who had no children. The queen was so distressed by this that she hardly had even an hour of joy. She was always complaining that it was too lonely and quiet in the royal palace. If only we had children, I'm sure things would be livelier, she said. No matter where she traveled in her kingdom, she found that God had blessed everyone with children, even the most wretched of hovels. And wherever she went, she could hear the women of the house scolding their children, saying how they'd done something bad again, whatever it might be. The queen found that amusing, and she yearned to do the same. Finally, the king and queen took in a little girl, a stranger. They decided to raise her at the royal palace, and they would scold her as if she were their own. One day, the little maiden was running around the courtyard in front of the castle. She was playing with a golden apple. Then a poor beggar woman appeared. She had the little girl with her, and it didn't take long before the girl and the maiden became friends. They began playing with each other, rolling the apple back and forth. The queen was sitting in a window in the castle when she saw the children playing. She tapped on the window to signal for her foster daughter to come inside. The maiden obeyed, but the beggar girl went with her. The two of them were holding hands when they stepped into the hall to see the queen. The queen scolded the maiden. You mustn't run around playing with a ragged beggar girl, she said. She wanted to chase the girl back outside. If the queen knew what my mother could do, she wouldn't chase me away, said the little girl. When the queen asked her what she meant, the child said that her mother could get a child of her own. The queen didn't believe her, but the beggar girl held her ground. She said every word of it was true. The queen should ask her mother. So the queen told the little girl to go and get her mother. Do you know what your daughter's been saying? The queen said to the woman. No, the beggar woman didn't know. She said that if you wanted to, you could get me a child. The queen should pay no attention to what the beggar child might say, said the woman, and she dashed out of the room. The queen grew quite angry, and again tried to chase the little girl out, but she insisted that every word she said was true. The queen should serve my mother enough drink to make her marry. Then she'll find out what she needs to be done, said the girl. The queen decided to try it. The beggar woman was brought back inside the castle. There she was served food and wine and mead, and she was much liked. It didn't take long for the drink to loosen her tongue. Then the queen again asked her the question. I suppose I do know a way, said the beggar woman. The queen should have 2 basins of water brought in one, one evening before bedtime. She should wash herself with the water, then shove the basins under her bed. When she looks under there in the morning, there will be 2 flowers subspread. One will be beautiful, the other hideous. Eat the beautiful flower, but don't touch the hideous one. Don't forget that part, said the beggar woman. The queen did what the woman had told her to do. She had the water brought up in 2 basins. She washed herself with the water, then shoved the basins under her bed. When she looked beneath in the morning, she saw two flowers. One of them was hideous, wild, with black petals. The other was brighter and lovelier than she had ever seen before. She ate it at once. But the beautiful flower tasted so good that she couldn't help herself. She ate the other flower too. Surely it won't make any difference, she thought. After a time, the queen took her bed to give birth. First, she gave birth to a little girl who was holding a ladle in her hand and riding a goat. Hideous and vile she was. The moment she came out to the world and shouted, "Mama!" "If I'm your mama, may God save and preserve me," said the queen. "Don't worry, another child will soon appear who is much more beautiful," said the girl on the goat. Wow. A short time later, the queen gave birth to another little girl. This one was beautiful and fair, that nobody had seen such a lovelier child. The queen was happy with her, as you might well imagine. The older girl they called Ragged Cap, for she was so vile and ragged, and on her head she wore a cap in tatters. The queen had no desire even to look at her, so the maids tried to lock the child in another room. But it did no good. The older girl wanted to be wherever her younger sister was. They could not be kept apart. On Christmas Eve, they were given both half. They were both half grown. There was a great noise and commotion on the porch outside the queen's room. Ragged Cap wanted to know what could be banging around, making such a racket outside. "Oh, it's never worth wondering about those things," said the queen. But Ragged Cap refused to give up. She wanted to know what it was. So the queen told her that troll women were out there playing Christmas games. Ragged Cap said she'd go out and chase them away, and no matter how much she begged her not to go, she said that she would and must chase the troll women away. But she told the queen to keep all the doors closed tight so that none of them was open to the slightest crack. Then Ragged Cap took out her ladle and went out to chase and shoo away the troll women. Out on the porch, a great commotion arose, the likes of which had never been heard. There was creaking and crashing as if timbers were about to fly apart. It's not certain how it happened, but one of the doors was standing open just a crack. The younger sister wanted to take a peek and see how things were going for Ragged Cap. She stuck her head out the door. Whoosh! The troll woman came over and snapped the girl's head off. Then she put a calf's head in its place. The princess instantly began mooing as she walked around the room. When Ragged Cap came back inside and caught sight of her sister, she fumed and scolded, for they hadn't taken proper care of the girl. She asked everyone if they thought things were better now that her sister was half a calf. "I'll just have to see about rescuing her," said Ragged Cap. She demanded from the king a ship that was well equipped and ready to sail, but she didn't want either a helmsman or a crew. She wanted to set sail with only her sister. And finally, that's what they let her do. Ragged Cap sailed off and headed straight for the land where the troll woman lived. When she came back to the dock, she told her sister to stay on board the ship and keep very quiet. In the meantime, Ragged Cap rode her goat up to the troll woman's castle. When she arrived, she found one of the windows open. There she saw her sister's head lying on the windowsill. She galloped at full speed onto the porch and snatched up the head that she took off. The troll women chased after her, for they wanted to get back the girl's head. They crowded around Ragged Cap, swarming and jostling. But the goats kicked its legs and butted its horns. The girl swung and stuck with her ladle. At long last, the thorn troll woman had to give up. When Ragged Cap got back to the ship, she took the calf's head off of her sister and put the girl's head back in its place. And her sister was human again. Then they sailed far, far away to an unknown kingdom. The king of that realm was a widower and had only one son. When he caught sight of the stranded ship, he sent messengers down to the shore to find out where the ship was from and who owned it. But when the king's servants reached the shore, the only living soul they found on board was Ragged Cat. She was riding her goat back and forth on deck. She moved so fast that her hair flew in all directions. The servants from the royal palace were quite astonished by what they saw, and they asked her if there were others on board. Ragged Cap said that her sister was there too. The servants wanted to see her, but Ragged Cap said no. You will only see her if the king comes here himself, she said. Then she continued riding her goat, making the deck thunder. The servants went back to the royal palace and reported what they had seen and heard aboard the ship. The king wanted to leave at once to see this girl who was riding a goat. When he arrived, Ragged Cap brought out her sister. She was so beautiful and fair that the king instantly fell in love with her. He accompanied both girls back to the castle, and he wanted to marry the sister. But Ragged Cap said no. The king could not have her for his wife unless the king's son was willing to marry Ragged Cap. As you might imagine, the king's son did not want to agree, for Ragged Cap was such a hideous troll. The king and everyone in the palace spent so much time trying to persuade him that he finally gave in. They promised to take Ragged Cap as his queen, though he did so reluctantly, and he was terribly distressed. Then preparations were made for the weddings. They brewed and they baked, and when everything was ready, it was time to leave for the church. The prince thought it was going to be the most dreadful ride to the church he had ever taken in his life. First, the king set off with his bride. She looked so lovely and so splendid that everyone stopped along the road to watch her ride past until she was out of sight. Then came the prince, riding next to Ragged Cap. She trotted along, sitting on her goat, and holding the ladle in her fist. The prince looked as if he were taking part in a funeral procession rather than riding to his own wedding. That's how distressed he seemed, and he said not a word. Why aren't you saying anything? Said Ragged Cap after they both rode a good distance. What is there to say? Replied the prince. You might ask me why I'm riding this hideous goat, said Ragged Cap. Why are you riding that hideous goat? Said the king's son. Is this a hideous goat? No, it's the most splendid horse any bride has ever ridden, replied Ragged Cap. And at that instant the goat turned into a horse, and that was the most magnificent steed the prince had ever seen in his life. And then they rode a little further, and the prince was just as distressed as before, and he couldn't manage to say a single word. Then Ragged Cap asked him once again why he wasn't speaking. When the prince replied he didn't know what to say, Ragged Cap said to him, You might ask me why I'm holding this hideous ladle in my fist. Why are you holding that hideous ladle? Said the king's son. Is this a hideous ladle? No, it's the loveliest silver fan any bride has ever carried. And with that instant it turned into a silver fan, so shiny that it gleamed. Then they rode a little further, but the prince was just as distressed as before, and he said not a word. After a while, Ragged Cap asked him again why he wasn't speaking. This time she told him to ask why she was wearing such a hideous gray cap on her head. Why are you wearing that hideous gray cap on your head? Asked the prince. Is this a hideous cap? No, it's the shiniest golden crown any bride has ever worn, replied Ragged Cap. And that's what it was. Then they rode for a good long while. The prince was still so distressed that he sat on his horse without saying a word. Then his bride asked him again why he wasn't speaking. This time she told him to ask why her face was so gray and hideous. Why is your face so gray and hideous? Asked the king's son. Am I hideous? You may think my sister is beautiful, but I'm 10 times more beautiful, said his bride. And then when the prince looked at her, she was so lovely that he thought there could be no lovelier woman in the entire world. Then, as you might imagine, the prince got his voice back, and they no longer rode with his head hanging. And then the weddings were celebrated with joyous and for days. After that, king and the prince set off, each with his own bride, to visit the father of the princesses. There they held another wedding celebration that went on forever. So, if you hurry over to the royal palace, there's still be a little bit of the wedding ale left. Doubtful. And with that comes, we have reached the 2 hour mark. And it has been some interesting stories. We will get the right speaker. Excuse me. Yeah. So, interesting stories. Led, what, 2 Ash led stories? I think. I think just 2. But anyway, we will continue this book next week. And tomorrow we will do more Brothers Grimm. So I will try to stick to the 2 hour mark just because, well, why not? In the meantime, let me see who is on. DVD. Let's see. Give me a second. Give me an hour. Give me a couple minutes. I don't know. See how things go. Let's see. Bow, bow, bow. Lettuces. What's around here? Penguin's in the room by himself, so maybe I'll go there. They say. Let's see. He is playing Dota 2. Ink phase on. Phasmophobia. Who's she playing with? She's been by herself. Do. Yeah. Papa Penguin's by himself. Oh. Ink phase. Teaching fun on ghosts. Yeah. It's over there. Do I have one? Let me check something. Wizard from Dead Road. Yeah, it's doing today. Streaming too. What is the streaming? Where's the Bubba's room? No, chat. Ugh. Let's go reading Faye. No. Never mind again. Okay. Oh, Fearless gets. Oh well. I'm gonna say have a good day, Cubs. Yeah. Pleasant dreams. I'll talk to you later. Good night. Let's go see what Pop Penguin's up to. Boom.